Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this edition of the 700 Club. I need to remind you, if you haven't voted, by all means do so. This is an obligation you have as a Christian, as a citizen. Render to Caesar what's Caesar's and to God what's God's. Well, Caesar's got intelligent citizenship. That is your obligation. And if you haven't voted, if the time, while this program is on, if the polls are still open, by all means, exercise your right to vote. It is crucial. And millions across the nation are voting to decide who controls the House of Representatives and the United States Senate.
Well, Vice President Mike Pence tells CBN News he believes Republicans will expand their majority in the Senate and keep the House. CBN's David Brody traveled with him on Air Force Two for the final push to get out and vote. Here's David's report.
Well, but you can see it. It's the enthusiasm.
You can feel it. You can feel it.
With his wife Karen by his side, we spent the final hours of these midterms on Air Force Two with an optimistic vice president. From Montana to South Dakota.
Hello, South Dakota!
The crowds were enthusiastic, as was the VP.
The blue wave. We were just on Air Force One the other day. President says the blue wave's dead. What's the answer on the blue wave we're hearing so much
Well, we think
about?
the blue wave's going to hit a red wall all across this country. I think we're going to expand our majority in the United States Senate.
You do.
I really believe we're going to hold the House of Representatives.
First stop, Montana, where the goal is to defeat a Senate Democrat living in big sky Trump country.
How much is Jon Tester in trouble here in Montana?
We think Matt Rosendale is in a great position to win this race. Jon Tester has been voting with the liberal agenda in the United States Senate every step of the way, voted more than 90% of the time with President Obama's agenda. That's not Montana.
Pence's final pitch to voters is pretty simple and to the point.
Think about 4.5 million new jobs created, unemployment at a 50-year low. We're rebuilding our military, constitutional conservatives being appointed to our courts. And that's exactly what the president and I told the American people that we would do. And the Democrats, by contrast, it's been an agenda of obstruction.
But Democrats are fired up and turned off by this administration's policies. Immigration is close to the top of the list.
What do you make of some of the rhetoric coming, what they say is from this administration, on immigration?
We have a crisis of illegal immigration at our southern border. But this caravan that's moving north is deeply concerning to people all across this country. I hear about it every day. It's the reason why the president's made it clear that the caravan will not be allowed to enter our country illegally. And we're taking decisive steps to administratively close the loopholes that human traffickers use to exploit vulnerable families and entice them to take the long and dangerous journey north.
Motivating the faithful base is Pence's main chore.
So if you're taking notes, I need you to vote.
If Republicans do well Tuesday night, Pence is pretty clear that the nonstop effort from President Trump will be a main reason.
Even though he's not on the ballot, he's campaigned as though we were. And I think that's the reason why we've seen such energy around the country. To be honest with you, David, as I've traveled around the country, I haven't seen this level of enthusiasm since the days just before the 2016 campaign.
Whatever happens Tuesday night, Mike Pence sees a larger hand at work in the country.
There seems to have been a cultural slide, obviously, for decades in this country. And along comes Donald Trump, God using imperfect people to accomplish his perfect will. What do you make of what's happened in this country since he's become president, and how you see this divinely, providentially playing out?
Well, I believe, as every president from George Washington forward, I believed in the role of providence in the life of this nation. And I really do believe that the prayers of the American people have made a difference. And even in these divided times, I really do believe those prayers are a pathway to heal our country and continue to move our nation forward.
The nation will soon find out what direction that means for the next 2 years. David Brody, CBN News, on Air Force Two with the Vice President.
Well, I'm glad Dave is there. Mike Pence is a tremendous man, is a wonderful Christian, and he's been a superb vice president. And the nice thing about it is he is a perfect backup for the president. If anybody says, well, let's get rid of Donald Trump, well, they're going to have Donald Trump second standing in line, and it was a brilliant choice. I don't know, of all the governors, why he picked him. But, I mean, Trump's got a real sense of who's good and who's bad. And Mike Pence is a superb pick. And he's been a stalwart in this election. And I think between the two of them, they have campaigned across this country. And the base is mobilized. And it's just amazing. So in any event, once more time, vote if you haven't voted. If the time is still open, by all means, get there. But one of President Trump's core issues has been protecting our southern border. As a caravan of migrants moves closer to America, John Jessup has more on that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. Here's John.
That's right, Pat. The president has made that migrant caravan the centerpiece of his message in the final stretch of this midterm election cycle. Thousands are moving across Mexico towards the southern border, and at Trump's order, the military is sending troops to prepare for their arrival. Special correspondent Chuck Holton shows how they're getting ready.
As the Trump administration has seen its efforts to stop illegal border crossings stymied by federal judges over and over again, those who want to come to America have been paying attention. Illegal crossings at the U.S. southern border have spiked, and Border Patrol agents have been struggling to keep up. The migrant caravan making its way north may have dwindled somewhat to just over 3,500 Hondurans, but more groups are coming along behind. In a briefing October 29th, CBP Commissioner Kevin McAleenan put it in perspective.
We are already facing a border security and humanitarian crisis at our southwest border. Each day, on average, for the last 3 weeks, CBP has encountered a combination of almost 1,900 persons apprehended crossing our border illegally or presenting without documents at ports of entry. They're incentivized to try to cross by the expectation that they will be allowed to stay. This means that at any given moment, there are tens of thousands of intending migrants between the Guatemala border and the U.S. border moving towards us at any given time. Within that flow, and included, are about 17,000 criminals last year, along with hardened smugglers and people from over 100 countries around the world.
Last year, more than 38,000 migrants who came looking for asylum were found not to meet the requirements and were refused. To deal with this burgeoning crisis, Border Patrol is bringing in every resource at its disposal, from extra agents to helicopters to special operations and medical teams. Add that to the U.S. troops who are moving in from around the country to provide logistical and engineering support, and there will soon be more assets guarding our southern frontier than we have currently in Afghanistan or Iraq. But even that might not be enough.
As a combat engineer, we are very highly trained in obstacles, which is very useful right now. It's just another way to support my country and do what needs to be done.
Northcom Commanding General Terrence O'Shaughnessy agrees.
I think the president has made it clear that border security is national security. That is the direction we've given. That's the direction that we're marching to. Our orders are very clear. We are engaged. We're here to support CBP, and we're going to secure the border.
These troops are being sent to fill in the gaps and form a human wall that will help border agents better handle the crisis along our 2,000-mile southern frontier. For CBN News, I'm Chuck Holton.
Pat, this appears to be a big issue in this election cycle.
Well, it should be. It's amazing this thing has come up at this time. I think somebody thought that what this would be an embarrassment to the president, and it would turn people away from him. The way that they're handling it has been so well done in terms of the United States. Trump, by putting troops there, and he's got tents for them, he's got field kitchens for them, so they'll be housed and fed, and they won't be mistreated, but at the same time, they will not be allowed to come across the border. Somebody, somewhere, is telling those poor people, you can break into America. Now, our laws have got to get fixed. We can't have that business of birthright citizenship, which is insanity, the way it's being applied. That's number one. And number two, we cannot allow somebody to claim asylum. That they're trained down in those groups as they come into Mexico. They're given leaflets as to what to say. There's a set phrase you're supposed to use. When you come in, you say, not that I'm looking for a good job, not that I'm poor, not that there's not enough opportunity to work. I'm being persecuted and I'm fleeing persecution. Now, let me tell you, the majority of people in Guatemala, Honduras, and these places, they're dedicated evangelical Christians. They're not about to be persecuting people. But these leftists are using that mantra to force the borders and to try to get citizenship. And if they get it in this country, you're looking at schooling, you're looking at hospital care, you're looking at long-term care, you're looking at food and clothing and shelter and all the rest of it. And it will not only be draining on the working population, it will drain our resources. We can't afford all that. There are hundreds of millions of people in Latin America. They'd probably all like to come to America. We can't let that happen. We've got to tell those people, you stay in your own country, and we'll do what we can with trade and benefits to try to get your economies up to speed. But you're not going to come up here. You can't do that. Now, there's something else that's coming out. The president is putting economic sanctions on Iran, and somebody said the one to watch is Soleimani, who is head of the Quds Force. What is Iran going to do? And John has more on that.
That's right, Pat. Iran's leaders are vowing to break new economic sanctions handed down by the United States. Monday, the Trump administration announced those sanctions targeting hundreds of Iranian companies and individuals. As George Thomas explains, the penalties are aimed at pressuring the hardline regime to stop stirring disruption in the Middle East.
More than 24 hours after the United States slapped Iran with some of the toughest sanctions ever to hit the Islamic regime, residents of the capital city, already facing economic dire straits, are bracing for even more pain.
The sanctions have greatly affected our lives 100%.
Everything from food, transportation, housing, and medical costs have risen dramatically.
High prices negatively impact every individual and every family.
Mina Soleil, who is visiting Tehran, fears this second round of sanctions will lead to more unemployment and hyperinflation.
Prices for shoes and clothes have gone up very high, and a lot of people are not able to buy these things anymore.
Some hope the economic pain will bring Iranians to the streets to protest the Islamic regime and call for its end, as they did last year and in 2009. The White House says the aim of the economic penalties is simple.
Our objective is to starve the Iranian regime of the revenue it uses to fund violent and destabilizing activities throughout the Middle East and indeed around the world.
In all, the U.S. government has sanctioned more than 900 Iran-related targets in the last 2 years. Secretary Pompeo says the Islamic regime has a clear choice.
It can either do a 180-degree turn from its outlaw course of action and act like a normal country, or it can see its economy crumble.
Thousands of Iranians responded to the new sanctions by chanting death to America, death to Israel, and burning U.S. and Israeli flags. They even squeezed in military drills in the northern part of the country in defiance, as the government vowed to circumvent U.S. sanctions and keep selling its oil. Iran's supreme leader, speaking on the eve of the anniversary of the November 4th, 1979 takeover of the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, used the occasion to accuse Washington of waging military, economic, and propaganda wars. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei told the crowd that America's influence was in decline.
America's power and hegemony in the world is declining and moving toward destruction. It's waning year by year.
But it is America that's putting the squeeze on the regime at the moment, and the White House says that pressure will be relentless until Iran changes its revolutionary course. George Thomas, CBN News.
Thanks, George. Well, back here at home, this political season has exposed great divides across the country, but the nation saw a touching scene in Missouri last night when a woman passed out at a GOP rally. The president asked people to pray, and the crowd began to sing Amazing Grace.
Amazing Grace. Thank you very much. That was beautiful.
In an interview Monday, the president said he regrets not taking a softer tone in his first 2 years in office. He told Sinclair Broadcast Group that after the elections, he'd love to see Democrats and Republicans get along. Well, you can watch live coverage of our CBN News channel tonight. To find the channel in your area, just go to our CBN News website, cbnnews.com. Our election coverage will also air live on cable on Freeform at 11 p.m. Eastern. Pat, back Back to you.
Well, we're looking forward to hearing, and tomorrow we're going to have our prognosticator, John Wackey, to see if he is a champion and can ride in triumph for his predictions, or whether he's going to be...
Feel no pressure, John.
Yeah, he's going to be the GOAT if he loses. I tend to go along with him. He's been right so far, and I think Mike Pence has given us the true picture. We'll have a serious build-up. The Republicans will have a serious pickup in the Senate, and will hold the House. And I think it's going to shock a few people. But John will be here to give us a rundown, and other members of our broadcast team. And later on, as I say, CBN News will be on tonight, giving you the results, and also in freeform, you'll be able to watch our team giving the results across the nation.